Welcome, gentle dreamer, to another night with whispers of the night, where moonlight guides you into calm and wonder. Tonight, we journey into the story of the Mirror of Moonlit Secrets, a tale of hidden reflections, quiet magic, and mysteries that stir while the world sleeps. Find a comfortable spot, perhaps, beneath a soft blanket, and allow the day's worries to drift away. A moment to notice your body, how it feels. Supported, how your shoulders soften, how your hands rest lightly in your lap, and how your breath flows in and out, slow and gentle. Let your mind wander with curiosity and gentle anticipation as you prepare to follow Lunara into her moonlit world, where shadows whisper and silvered light glows softly, revealing secrets meant only for those who listen. If you haven't yet, subscribe to Whispers of the Night and tap the bell to join our nightly journeys into serenity, dreams, and wonder. Now take a deep, slow breath in and outlet. Your imagination awakens softly, gently, ready to step into a world of quiet magic and moonlit secrets, where every reflection holds a story and every whisper calls your name. Close your eyes now and take a slow, deep breath in and gently let it out. Another soft inhale and exhale, feeling your body sink deeper into comfort. Imagine yourself in a quiet attic where moonlight spills through a tall window, silver and calm, casting soft, dancing shadows across the wooden floor. Feel the stillness of the night surrounding you, a gentle, protective hush, as if the world itself is holding its breath, waiting quietly until slowly and exhale, letting every worry drift away with your breath ahead. An antique mirror rests faintly glowing under the moons. Tender light flickers of magic shimmer softly across its surface, whispering secrets meant only for you. Take another deep breath in and out, step closer in your mind toward the glow of the mirror, letting its subtle magic ease your thoughts, letting each exhale release tension. The attic feels warmer now. Soft blankets rest in the corners, gentle candlelight flickers every detail, bathed in silver. Glow, inhale and exhale, the mirror begins to shimmer. Faint trails of light, dancing petals floating gently, drifting through the soft mist. Feel your body relax more deeply. Every muscle softens. Every thought slows your mind, becoming as calm as the still moonlit night. The mirror calls to you softly, inviting your imagination to wander down silvered paths, to explore quiet cornerstone, discover hidden wonders. Breathe in calm and breathe out tension, letting your mind drift, floating gently along moonlit reflections until you feel lighter, softer, more at peace. The night embraces you, holding you in quiet serenity as your thoughts settle like mist and your imagination glides slowly, gently along the trails of silver light, leading you into dreams, into rest, into peaceful sleep. Inhale and exhale. and let the stillness of the mirror's magic carry you softly deeper into calm, into quiet into the gentle embrace of the night. The Mirror of Moonlit Secrets. Reflections at Twilight. Twilight draped the world in muted shades of lavender and silver, the way it often did just before night claimed the sky. Lunara stepped carefully along the narrow, creaking staircase that led to the attic, her bare feet brushing against the worn wood. The air smelled faintly of aged cedar and forgotten things books whose spines had long lost their colors. Fabrics that once held life and warmth but now lay stiff and dusty. She had always been drawn to this hidden space above the house, the place where time seemed to slow and the echoes of past inhabitants lingered in quiet corners. Tonight, she had come seeking only the solace of solitude, a pause from the hum of the lower rooms and the world beyond the attic window. A slender beam of moonlight, falling just right, guided her steps toward the far end of the attic. There, half hidden beneath a stack of tattered canvases and a forgotten chest of trinkets, she saw it, an antique mirror, its frame carved with intricate spirals that seemed almost alive in the shifting light. The silvered edges were dulled by age, and a thin layer of dust blurred the glass's surface, but even so, it held a strange allure. It was not just a mirror. It was as though it had waited for her. She knelt before it, brushing away the dust with the soft sleeve of her lavender sweater, and saw her reflection emerge from the haze. At first, it was simply herself, her long hair catching the last hints of daylight, her eyes wide and curious. But then, almost imperceptibly, a flicker passed across the mirror's surface, like a shadow brushing the corner of her vision. Lunara froze. The sound of her own breathing seemed unnaturally loud in the attic's stillness, she whispered, though the sound felt silly in the empty space. The mirror did not answer in words, yet there was a sense of something waiting, as if the glass itself contained consciousness, subtle and patient. She leaned closer, eyes straining to focus, and thought she saw movement again, teeny ripples in her reflection, like the surface of a pond disturbed by a gentle breeze. Her heartbeat quickened. Curiosity, always a persistent companion, took hold. She reached out tentatively, fingertips hovering just above the cold glass. The mirror's surface was smooth, unyielding, yet as she stared, the faintest whisper brushed against her mind, a sound she could not locate in the air but felt pressing at the edges of her awareness. It was a whisper without words, a murmur that spoke in emotions rather than language, anticipation, invitation, warning. Lunara pulled back, startled, and then laughed softly at her own nerves. The attic was full of drafts. The whispers were probably nothing more than the wind rustling old papers and broken boards. Still, something about the mirror set her senses alight. It was not merely a reflection of what was, it seemed to promise what might be, or perhaps what had been and lingered, refusing to fade completely. she sat cross-legged on the floor, resting her hands on her knees, and studied the mirror with careful attention. The frames, carved spirals, twisted in ways that drew the eye inward toward the glass itself. Moonlight pooled at the base, illuminating the carvings and making them shimmer faintly, as if the mirror had its own quiet glow. There was a rhythm to the reflections, a subtle pulse that was not her own heartbeat. Lunara's fingers twitched, itching to touch the carvings, to trace the spirals with her hands and feel the story they might tell. Time seemed to bend around the mirror. Minutes passed, or maybe hours. The attic's shadows deepened, stretching across stacks of boxes and leaning ladders. The moon rose higher, and the silver light became brighter, spilling across the mirror until it seemed almost liquid, almost alive. And then, just as she had felt before, a flicker of motion. It was not her reflection moving, not in the ordinary way. It was something behind the glass, subtle and fleeting, a shadowy figure, perhaps, or a memory trying to emerge. Her breath caught in her throat. Is someone there? She asked again, though more softly this time, unsure whether she wanted an answer. The mirror remained silent, yet her heart told her it had heard her. There was an intelligence in the way the flickers moved, a rhythm she could not name but felt deep in her chest. Curiosity overrode caution, and she reached forward once more, fingertips grazing the glass. This time, the mirror seemed to respond. The surface rippled faintly, cool and smooth under her touch, yet charged with something she could not define. Images began to shimmer just beneath the surface. They were fleeting, impossible to capture fully in her mind. A garden under starlight, a figure walking along a quiet stone path, a room filled with candles whose flames danced without wind. Each glimpse lasted only a heartbeat before fading, like fragments of dreams caught in a sudden gust of morning wind. Lunara leaned closer, captivated. She felt drawn into the mirror, as though it were a doorway rather than a mere reflection. Her thoughts raced. Could it be a portal, a relic of old magic, or simply a trick of light? Moonlight and shadow conspired to tease her senses. She didn't know, and for a long moment she did not care. The mystery itself was intoxicating. The whispers returned, more insistent this time, brushing against her consciousness like the soft hiss of silk across skin. She could not decipher words, yet she understood their tone. Curiosity, discovery, longing. It was as though the mirror recognized her as someone who might listen, who might watch and wait patiently for its secrets. Lunara shivered, not from cold, but from the thrill of encountering something alive, something beyond her ordinary life. She settled on the floor, drawing her knees close to her chest, her eyes never leaving the glass. Each flicker of movement, each whispered murmur, made her pulse race. She felt as though she were on the edge of a revelation, the threshold of something extraordinary. And yet, there was also caution in ancient memory lodged in her bones, telling her to proceed gently. The attic around her seemed to fade. The stacks of boxes, the old trunks, even the faint drafts brushing her hair all disappeared into the periphery of her awareness. All that remained was the mirror and the gentle, insistent rhythm of its movement. Lunara realized she could watch for hours, losing herself in the shimmering reflections that were almost real, almost otherworldly. She touched the glass again, fingertips tracing the ripples that seemed to respond to her presence. The whispers grew more distinct, though still wordless. It was a language of emotion and sensation, of light and shadow, of longing and memory. She imagined the mirror had seen centuries, had watched countless lives pass by, had reflected moments of joy, grief, and wonder. And now, for reasons she could not explain, it had chosen her as its observer, its confidant. A sudden thought made her pause. Perhaps the mirror was not just reflecting her world, but offering glimpses of others. Places she had never been, people she would never meet, moments that existed in parallel with her own. Each flicker, each shimmer, seemed to contain an entire universe compressed into a heartbeat. Lunara's mind reeled with possibilities. Could she step closer, lean in further, and see more? Or would that be reckless, inviting something she could not control? The attic grew colder, though the chill was not unpleasant. It carried a sense of purity, as though the mirror's presence had drawn the air into its orbit, filtering out the ordinary warmth of life below. Lunara wrapped her arms around her knees, feeling both small and infinite at once. In that quiet, suspended twilight, she felt a connection to something ancient, a pulse beneath the surface of the world that few ever noticed. The mirror, with its silent whispers, was her guide into this hidden realm. Ours are perhaps only moments passed in silent communion. Lunara's eyes were wide, reflecting not just her own image, but the faint shimmer of what lay beyond. She did not blink, afraid to lose even the smallest fragment of the visions that danced across the surface. She felt as though she were learning a language older than words, a language of light, shadow, and subtle motion. And then, as the first hints of dawn crept along the edges of the attic window, the mirror seemed to settle. The flickers slowed, the whispers faded into a soft hum, and for a long moment, the glass lay still and silent. Lunara exhaled slowly, her body relaxed for the first time in what felt like hours. She understood, without fully understanding, that the mirror would wait for her, that it had chosen this moment to reveal just enough to stir her curiosity, to awaken her mind to possibilities she had never imagined. She leaned back on her hands, the pale light of dawn brushing her face, and studied the mirror one last time before retreating from the attic. Its surface now reflected only the quiet, empty room, but she knew the secrets it held were far from gone. Lunara descended the creaking stairs slowly, heart still quickened, carrying with her a sense of wonder and anticipation. The mirror awaited her return, patient and eternal, a threshold to mysteries she had only begun to glimpse. Even as she reached the lower rooms, the ordinary hum of the house returned, the soft ticking of a clock, the distant murmur of traffic, the faint warmth of morning, but a part of her remained in the attic, with the mirror, with the whispers, with the promise of worlds yet unseen. She knew, deep down, that this discovery would change everything. That the quiet attic and its ancient glass held the first thread of a story that would unravel in ways she could not yet imagine. And so, as twilight faded into the full light of morning, Lunara carried a secret within her, a secret of flickering shadows, of whispers without words, of reflections that were more than they seemed. The mirror had awakened something in her, a sense of wonder and vigilance, a curiosity that would not rest. And somewhere beyond the veil of ordinary sight, the mirror waited, ready to reveal the next fragment, the next whisper, the next flicker, whenever Lunara was ready to listen. Whispers beneath the glass. The days that followed the discovery of the mirror were unlike any Lunara had experienced before. In the quiet moments of her afternoons, when the house was still and the world outside seemed to pause, she found herself drawn once more to the attic. The memory of moonlight spilling across the antique glass haunted her like a secret she could not fully hold in her mind. It was not simply curiosity that led her back, but a subtle insistence, a tug at the edges of her awareness, as though the mirror itself were calling her to return. She had begun to notice changes. At first, they were almost imperceptible, a shadow that lingered longer than it should, a flicker of movement that did not correspond to the drift of dust or the play of sunlight through the window. Lunara would stop mid-step, eyes narrowing, heart quickening, and find nothing when she turned to investigate. Yet the mirror's surface, as she approached, held a faint shimmer, a trace of life beneath its glassy calm. One evening, as twilight softened the edges of the room in silver and lavender, Lunara perched before the mirror sketchbook open on her lap. The attic felt alive in a way it never had before. Every creak of the floorboards, every sigh of the old house seemed amplified, yet not distracted. They accompanied the subtle pulse of the mirror, as if the world itself conspired to draw her attention inward. She dipped her pencil to the page and began to sketch the frame, tracing the spirals and curves with meticulous care. The carvings seemed to shift in the light, twisting in ways that made her question her own eyes. She paused, pencil hovering, and looked at the glass. A shadow flickered brief, delicate, almost like a reflection of something she did not yet know existed. Her fingers tightened around the pencil. "It's like it's alive," she whispered softly to herself, almost afraid to speak the thought aloud. The mirror did not answer, not in words, but she felt a subtle warmth emanating from the glass, a gentle hum that pressed against the edges of her mind. It was as though the mirror understood her, even as it remained silent. Lunara began to keep a journal, not only for sketches, but for her thoughts, sensations, and the glimpses of what lay behind the glass. Each evening, she would record what she saw, shadows that darted just beyond the corner of her eye, faint shapes that seemed almost tangible, whispers that brushed against her mind. They were not words, exactly more like vibrations of feeling, tones that suggested curiosity, invitation, and sometimes warning. At first, she doubted herself. Perhaps the attic's shadows were playing tricks, or her mind was conjuring life where there was none. But as the days passed, the patterns became undeniable. The mirror was responding, not merely reflecting the world, but interacting with her. When she thought of a memory, a fragment of her own life, a corresponding shimmer would ripple across the glass. A fleeting shadow would twist into a shape reminiscent of her thoughts, and she would feel the soft murmur of recognition, like a pulse beneath the surface of the world. It was both exhilarating and unsettling. Lunara found herself caught between fascination and unease. The mirror was beautiful, intoxicating in its quiet complexity, yet it carried a weight she could not name. It demanded attention, drew her into a rhythm beyond ordinary perception, and left her restless when she turned away. She could feel it in her chest, a lingering sense that something had begun that could not be easily undone. One night, she sat cross-legged before the mirror sketchbook open, pencil moving rapidly to capture the subtle motions she had glimpsed. A shadow moved across the glass, faint but deliberate. She drew quickly, lines trembling slightly, feeling the pulse of her own excitement and fear. She wrote notes in the margins, recording emotions she could not quite put into words. Anxiety and wonder intertwined, shapes that feel alive but cannot speak, the pull of something unseen as she worked. The whispers began again, soft and insistent, brushing against her mind. They did not follow the rhythm of sound. They were vibrations of sensation, like the memory of a melody she had never heard. Sometimes they seemed to echo her own thoughts, a reflection of her curiosity, while at other times they hinted at possibilities she had not yet imagined. The mirror was not passive. It was aware. It was listening. Days bled into nights, and Lunara's introspection deepened. She began to wonder what the mirror truly wanted. Was it merely a repository of forgotten images, a collector of shadows and memories? Or was it a gateway, a threshold to realms beyond her perception? The more she thought about it, the more the mirror seemed to respond, its surface rippling faintly in a way that suggested recognition, even approval. She started to dream differently too. Her sleep was haunted by images that blurred the line between memory and vision. In these dreams, she wandered through corridors of shifting light, rooms filled with mirrors that reflected not her own image, but impossible landscapes, creatures she could not name, skies of strange colors and textures. Upon waking, she would jot down fragments of these nocturnal journeys, hoping the mirror might reveal them to her in waking life. Sometimes, when she returned to the attic, she saw hints of the same scenes shimmer in the glass, faint but unmistakable. Her journal became a map of these interactions. Each entry marked a step further into the mirror's mysteries, sketches of shadows that danced just beyond comprehension, notes on whispers that seemed to mimic her thoughts, observations of subtle changes in the glass's surface. She wrote with a reverence she had never felt for any ordinary object. The mirror was no longer just glass and frame. It was a living presence, and she was its witness. Yet fascination was always tinged with unease. There were moments when the mirror's shadows seemed too deliberate to knowing. Shapes would linger, a fraction longer than they should, almost forming something recognizably human before dissolving again. The whispers sometimes carried an urgency she could not interpret, a silent insistence that made her pulse quicken. She felt drawn forward, yet cautious, aware that she was touching something ancient and unfathomable. One evening, after a long day of observation, Lunara paused in front of the mirror and allowed herself to simply watch, without sketching or recording. The moonlight pooled at the base of the frame, soft and silver, illuminating the carvings that seemed to twist and breathe with subtle life. She rested her hands lightly on the edge of the glass, feeling the coolness against her skin. The surface rippled faintly, as though the mirror were acknowledging her presence, aware of her contemplation, and then she saw it, a figure just beyond the edge of reflection, impossibly distant yet intimately close, moving with a grace she could not name. It vanished before she could fully register it, leaving only a faint shimmer and the echo of a whisper in her mind. Her heart hammered in her chest. She had glimpsed something beyond her own world, something that existed only in the space the mirror occupied between reflection and reality. The realization was both thrilling and terrifying. Lunara understood, with a sudden clarity, that the mirror was not merely a passive observer of life. It had depth, intent, and perhaps even consciousness. She was its companion now, drawn into a silent dialogue that required patience, attentiveness, and courage. Every shadow, every flicker, every whisper was a word in a language she had only begun to comprehend. She returned to her journal, writing with fervor, recording not only what she had seen, but how it made her feel, a sense of connection to something larger, the delicate thrill of witnessing worlds unseen, the quiet fear of stepping too close to a boundary she did not fully understand. The words helped anchor her, giving form to sensations that were otherwise elusive. As the days wore on, Lunara found herself thinking constantly of the mirror, even when she was elsewhere. It was as though a tether had been formed, an invisible thread connecting her to the attic and the secret world within the glass. She felt changes in her self-heightened awareness, deeper introspection, an ability to notice subtleties she had once overlooked. The mirror's influence was subtle but pervasive, shaping the way she perceived light, shadow, and motion. Even mundane tasks took on new significance. The way sunlight reflected off her morning tea, the pattern of shadows on her bedroom wall, the faint movements of dust in a sunbeam mall seemed imbued with meaning. The mirror had opened a door not only to its own hidden realm, but to a heightened awareness of the world around her. She could sense patterns and rhythms that others might miss, small whispers of existence that had previously gone unnoticed. And yet, she could not ignore the tinge of unease that lingered. There were moments when the whispers seemed almost urgent, when shadows appeared too deliberate, and when the mirror's pulse beneath her fingertips felt like a heartbeat that was not her own. She realized she was participating in something far larger than herself, something with its own rhythms and desires. The knowledge was exhilarating, but demanded careful attention. As twilight descended each evening, Lunara made her way to the attic, journal in hand. The mirror awaited her with quiet patience, its surface shimmering with possibilities, reflecting not only her image, but fragments of other worlds, other times, and perhaps other lives. Each visit was an exploration, a dialogue, a meditation, and when she finally left, descending the creaking stairs with the journal clutched to her chest, she carried the mirror's presence with her, a silent, watchful companion in the waking world, urging her to observe, to record, and to understand. By the time the moon rose full and luminous in the night sky, Lunara had begun to feel a profound kinship with the mirror. It was not simply an object of fascination, but a catalyst for her own self-discovery, a bridge between her world and the unfathomable spaces beyond reflection. The whispers, the shadows, the subtle movements, all were threads in a tapestry she could not yet fully see, but was determined to follow. And so, with journal open and pencil poised, she returned night after night, each visit deepening her connection, sharpening her perception, and entwining her more tightly with the mysteries hidden beneath the glass. Her world had grown larger, stranger, and infinitely more complex. The mirror was patient, and she was learning to be patient as well, watching, listening, waiting for the secrets it chose to reveal. The attic, once a quiet space of forgotten things, had become a place of anticipation and revelation, and Lunara, with her sketchbook and her whispered thoughts, was its willing witness. The mirror did not demand understanding, it demanded attention, presence, and the courage to notice what others might overlook, and she would give it all, knowing that each flicker, each whisper, each shadow was a key to a story far greater than her own, a story unfolding quietly beneath the glass. The moon's hidden path. The attic was quiet, but tonight it felt different. The air seemed charged, as though the room itself were holding its breath, waiting for something to awaken. Lunara approached the mirror with careful steps, her journal tucked under one arm, pencil in hand, ready to record whatever might unfold. Moonlight filtered through the small, dusty window, spilling across the wooden floor in silver beams. The light touched the mirror's edges and made the intricate spirals of its frame glimmer faintly, as if alive. As she drew closer, the surface of the glass shimmered in an unfamiliar way. It was subtle at first, a thin silver thread weaving across the surface like a ripple in still water. But then, gradually, a scene began to emerge, a path bathed in pale moonlight, lined with trees whose leaves glowed softly, faint luminescence, catching her attention even from the dim attic. The air seemed to hum through the glass, faint but insistent, carrying a sensation she could feel in her chest, a tugging curiosity, a gentle pull toward what lay beyond. Lunara's breath caught. She had seen glimpses before, shadows and flickers of other places, but this was different. This path was vivid and deliberate, a world that seemed to exist just beyond the barrier of the mirror. It beckoned her, inviting her to step closer to explore. Yet it carried a subtle warning, a sense that this was not merely reflection, but a threshold. She knelt before the mirror, fingertips hovering just above the glass, and felt a pulse beneath her touch, faint but unmistakable. The path seemed to shift with her gaze, bending gently, trees swaying, even though there was no wind. Moonlight glimmered along the surface, casting silver patterns that danced across the walls. Her journal lay open, but for the first time, she did not immediately reach for her pencil. Instead, she simply watched, absorbing every detail, letting her senses attune to the strange rhythm of this hidden world. The whispers returned, soft and melodic, brushing against her mind without forming words. They were more insistent tonight, tinged with a sense of familiarity, as though the mirror remembered her from previous nights. They resonated with her curiosity, echoing her desire to understand, yet carried a subtle caution, reminding her that every path had its shadows. Lunara leaned closer, feeling the cold glass against her fingertips, and saw the path extend deeper into the unknown, trees giving way to a faint mist that glowed faintly with a silver light, a trait she had never fully understood until now, seemed to amplify what she could see. As the moon outside moved higher, bathing the attic in a fuller glow, more details emerged. Tiny lights flickered among the trees, perhaps fireflies, or perhaps something else entirely. Shapes moved just beyond the edge of the path, figures too faint to define, yet their presence was undeniable. A soft rustle accompanied their motion, delicate as silk brushing over leaves. Lunara's pulse quickened. She felt a pull, a gentle insistence to step closer, to bridge the gap between the familiar and the extraordinary. She raised her hand and placed it fully against the mirror. The surface responded beneath her palm, rippling faintly, cool and smooth, yet alive with the sensation of something beyond. The path seemed to bend slightly, as if acknowledging her presence, inviting her forward without speaking. Her heart beat rapidly, a mixture of wonder and apprehension. She could step away, return to the comfort of the ordinary attic, or she could lean in, allow herself to be drawn into the mystery. The pull was subtle but undeniable. She had never felt a connection to anything like this before, a sense of recognition, as though the mirror and its hidden world were extensions of her own curiosity, mirrors of the possibilities that lay dormant within her. She knelt, pressing her forehead lightly against the glass, closing her eyes. The whispers wrapped around her consciousness, warm and intricate, urging her to pay attention, to notice the details she might otherwise miss. When she opened her eyes, she saw the path more clearly. Moonlight pooled along its edges, and the trees leaned slightly inward, as though forming a protective archway. She could see small creatures, luminous and delicate, flitting between branches, casting tiny, shifting shadows across the ground. Lunara felt a surge of courage. The mirror's pull was not forceful, but insistent. It offered no commands, only invitation. She realized that curiosity alone would not be enough. she needed courage, the kind that allowed her to linger in the unknown, to observe and interact without fear. And so she did. She placed both hands on the mirror now, feeling the pulse beneath her fingertips, and leaned closer still. The whispers seemed to entwine with her thoughts, a gentle current of sensation that made her aware of the fragile boundary between her world and the one beyond. She began to notice subtle changes in the path as she watched. The mist shifted in soft waves, revealing glimpses of distant structures, bridges, and towers that glimmered faintly in the silver light. Shapes moved along the edges of the path, almost imperceptible, as though watching her in return. It was a dialogue without words, the mirror and the world beyond, communicating through light, shadow, and motion. Lunara felt both participant and observer, drawn into a rhythm she could not fully name, but instinctively understood. The moon's influence was undeniable. As she observed, she realized that the world within the mirror responded to its phases. The fuller the moon outside, the brighter the path, the more intricate the details that emerged. She could see leaves shimmering with silver dew, tiny streams reflecting moonlight, and even patterns in the mist that seemed deliberately designed, like messages waiting for someone patient enough to notice. Lunara traced them with her eyes and hands, careful not to break the fragile connection. Her journal became her anchor. She sketched the path, the glowing trees, the faintly visible structures, noting the creatures she glimpsed and the shapes that shimmered in and out of sight. She wrote down her impressions, the soft pulsing of the mirror, the sensation of the whispers brushing her thoughts, the growing clarity of the hidden path. Each entry deepened her understanding, allowing her to notice patterns she might otherwise miss night after night. She returned to the attic, the pull of the mirror becoming almost irresistible. She experimented cautiously, moving her hands along the surface, leaning closer, watching for responses. The hidden path shifted subtly with her attention, bending, revealing, retreating. The trees sometimes parted slightly, as if granting her a clearer view, or the mist swirled to obscure sections that felt more private, more secretive. Lunara realized that the mirror's world was not fixed. It was fluid, responsive to her engagement, and infinitely complex. She began to sense subtle emotions in the movement of the shadows and shapes: curiosity, mischief, patience, and occasional caution. It was as though the world beyond the mirror had its own consciousness, aware of her presence, yet deliberately maintaining a distance, offering glimpses, but never full revelation. Lunara found herself both exhilarated and humbled. She had never encountered anything that demanded observation with such quiet insistence, nor had she felt so acutely the need for patience and respect. One night, as the moon reached its zenith, the mirror revealed a new element, a bridge, arched delicately over a silver stream, shimmering in the moonlight. Tiny lights floated along the water's surface, drifting downstream like lanterns carried by an invisible current. Lunara traced the bridge with her eyes, feeling a pull stronger than ever before. She imagined herself stepping across it, moving along the hidden path, and felt a thrill she had not anticipated. Yet the unease lingered, subtle but present. She understood that this was not a world to enter lightly. It was a realm of reflection and suggestion, revealing its secrets only to those who approached with curiosity, tempered by patience and caution. The pull of the mirror was gentle, seductive, and she knew that to act recklessly could disturb the delicate balance it maintained. Lunara pressed her forehead against the glass once more, letting the sensations of the hidden path wash over her. She felt a quiet courage bloom within her, a courage not born of recklessness, but of the determination to explore, observe, and understand. The mirror's world was vast, luminous, and subtly alive, and she realized that she was learning not only about it, but about herself, her patience, her curiosity, her willingness to engage with the unknown. Hours passed like moments. The attic's shadows deepened, the moonlight shifted, and yet Lunara remained, absorbed in the interplay of light, mist, and motion. She traced the glowing path with her hands and eyes, noting each subtle change, each new shimmer, each whisper that brushed against her mind. The mirror's pulse beneath her fingertips was steady now, like a heartbeat in time with her own, and she felt an intimate connection to the world it revealed when she finally stepped back. The first hints of dawn were brushing the edges of the attic window. The hidden path receded into silver ripples, the mist fading, the shapes dissolving, leaving only the familiar reflection of the quiet attic and herself. Yet the sense of wonder lingered. She knew that the mirror had revealed only a fragment of its secrets, that the hidden path was waiting, patient and eternal, ready to respond to her attention whenever she returned. Lunara descended the stairs slowly, journal in hand, heart still quickened with the thrill of discovery. She understood now that her interactions with the mirror required both curious shadows of secrets. The attic felt different tonight. Even before Lunara stepped across the threshold, she sensed a subtle shift in the air, a faint vibration beneath her skin, a whispering that seemed to come from the walls themselves. The moonlight poured through the small, dusty window in silver beams, illuminating the corners of the room where shadows clung stubbornly. And yet, among the familiar stacks of forgotten boxes and old furniture, there was something new, a faint, silvery glow that did not belong to the moon, flickering gently across the floorboards as if the attic itself were breathing. She approached the mirror cautiously, heart beating a little faster than usual. In the days since she had first glimpsed the hidden path, she had returned countless times, drawn by curiosity and the quiet insistence of the glass. But tonight, there was something different, a subtle hum of magic that seemed to ripple outward from the mirror, touching everything in the room. The shadows along the walls, were alive with motion, flickering and twisting in patterns she could not fully understand. Lunara knelt before the mirror, placing her fingertips lightly on the cool surface. The pulse beneath her hands was steady but insistent, almost as if the mirror were aware of her hesitation, aware of her thoughts and fears. She leaned closer, peering into the glass, and saw that the hidden path had returned. The trees glowed faintly under the moonlight, their branches swaying as though moved by an invisible wind. But now there were new elements, shadows, at the edges of the path that did not quite belong, faint forms that lingered just beyond comprehension, seeming to watch her with a quiet intelligence. Her breath, the mirror, had grown bolder, more complex, as if testing her attention, challenging her curiosity. She traced the edges of the glass with her fingertips, feeling the subtle vibrations, the gentle tug that suggested a bridge between her world and the one beyond. The whispers returned, soft and insistent, threading around her mind. They carried no words, yet she understood them in the sense of emotion and intention, curiosity, caution, invitation. There was beauty here, but also a shadow of something dangerous, something that required both patience and vigilance. The silvery glow in the attic had spread further, pooling across the floorboards and climbing faintly along the walls. Shadows shifted and intertwined with the moonlight, forming patterns that suggested figures, shapes, even fleeting glimpses of faces. Lunara blinked, uncertain if her eyes were deceiving her or if the magic of the mirror had spilled outward into her. Each flicker, each whisper seemed to draw her attention deeper into the attic's corners, revealing the spaces she had once overlooked: a faded tapestry, a cracked trunk, the remnants of forgotten toys. All of it shimmered faintly now, touched by the mirror's subtle influence. A thought came unbidden to her mind: the origins of the mirror. Where had it come from? How had it ended up in this quiet attic, hidden beneath dust and shadows? She remembered her grandmother's stories, tales of old magic that lingered in objects long forgotten, of relics passed down through generations, carrying fragments of memory and power. Could this mirror be such a relic? Perhaps it was connected to her own family, to a past she had only glimpsed in half-remembered stories and faded photographs. Lunara's fingers drifted over the frame, tracing the carved spirals that seemed almost alive in the silver light. She imagined the hands that had created it, the purpose behind its intricate patterns. Was it meant to capture reflections, or was it a doorway, a conduit for things that existed just beyond ordinary perception? The questions swirled in her mind, mingling with awe and fear, curiosity and doubt. She felt a sudden shiver, as if the mirror itself sensed her contemplation, responding to her need to understand. The whispers grew slightly louder, brushing against her thoughts in an almost melodic rhythm. They were not words, yet she felt that they carried messages, warnings perhaps, or encouragement. She hesitated. The mirror offered the promise of revelation, but she sensed that it was not without danger. Something about the flickering shadows suggested that the world beyond the glass was vast, intricate, and not entirely benign. It was beautiful, yes, but there was an edge to its perfection, a reminder that some mysteries could be perilous to pursue too recklessly. She thought of the diary she had found in a corner of the attic weeks ago, a small, leather-bound journal filled with the careful handwriting of someone long gone. Could the mirror be connected to this diary? Perhaps the entries held clues, accounts of the mirror's previous owners, or hints at its magic. Lunara had yet to read the older pages fully, afraid that too much knowledge might alter her perception, might push her beyond the threshold she was not yet ready to cross. Still, the temptation was powerful. The mirror's pull was mirrored in the tug at her own curiosity, a quiet insistence that she look deeper, that she seek understanding, even as shadows flickered at the edges of her vision. She glanced at the silvery glow now, creeping along the walls. Faint shapes lingered, their fleeting, almost imperceptible figures that seemed to mimic the shadows within the mirror. It was as if the magic was not confined to the glass, but had begun to influence her surroundings, leaving echoes of the hidden path in the ordinary world. The effect was mesmerizing, almost hypnotic. Lunara felt herself leaning closer to the mirror, drawn by both wonder and an unnameable anxiety. Her heart beat faster as she traced the intricate frame once more. The pulse beneath her fingers seemed to respond to her own heartbeat, a subtle synchronization that made her feel simultaneously powerful and fragile. She could sense her own emotions mirrored back at her by the glass, the awe, the fear, the curiosity, the temptation to venture too close. Each shadow seemed alive, each flicker deliberate. It was not merely a reflection, it was an invitation to participate in a dialogue she barely understood. She thought of stepping back, of retreating to the safety of the ordinary attic, but the pull was irresistible. She leaned in, pressing her forehead gently to the glass, closing her eyes. The whispers wrapped around her consciousness, brushing lightly against her mind. They carried an urgency she could not name, a subtle insistence. When she opened her eyes, the mirror revealed more than before. Deeper shadows, brighter glimmers of silver light along the path, subtle movements that suggested hidden life. Lunara felt a shiver of both excitement and fear. She realized that the mirror was not merely showing her a world. It was testing her, probing her curiosity, gauging her patience and courage. There was beauty here, undeniably, but it was laced with danger, a reminder that the unknown was not always safe. She had to proceed carefully, observing and learning without allowing herself to be swept away completely. The attic seemed to pulse in rhythm with the mirror now. The silvery light touched every surface, making the shadows dance and shimmer. Faint echoes of whispered secrets drifted through the space, brushing against Lunara's consciousness like delicate silk. They hinted at stories long forgotten, memories captured within the glass, fragments of other lives that had interacted with this same mirror. She wondered if she could ever truly understand its origins, or if some mysteries were meant to remain partially hidden, only revealing themselves in fragments to those willing to watch and wait. A sudden flicker caught her eye. A shadow moved along the edge of the mirror, a subtle figure that seemed almost human in shape, yet too delicate, too ephemeral to be real. Lunara's breath caught. The whispers rose in intensity, brushing insistently against her mind, urging caution. She recoiled slightly, heart hammering, yet the curiosity that had drawn her here in the first place refused to let her turn away. She studied the movement carefully, tracing its path with her eyes. It disappeared and reappeared, a shadow dancing on the edge of comprehension, a secret teasing her from just beyond reach. She sat back on her heels, taking a slow, steadying breath. The mirror's pull was strong, undeniable, yet it demanded respect. She realized that part of this magic's allure was precisely that tension, the push and pull between desire and caution, between curiosity and fear. The attic was alive with the mirror's subtle influence. Every flicker of shadow, every shimmer of silvery light, every echo of whispered secrets, urging her to pay attention, to notice, to learn. Lunara thought again of the diary, the family legends, the whispers of forgotten magic. Perhaps the mirror had once belonged to an ancestor, or perhaps it had drifted through countless hands, collecting fragments of stories, memories, and intentions. The thought both excited and unsettled her. She longed to know more, to trace the history of this artifact. But she also understood the risks inherent in looking too deeply. Some doors, once opened, could not easily be closed. The shadows on the walls shifted again, more deliberately this time. Faint figures emerged, fleeting glimpses of forms that seemed to watch her in silent anticipation. The silver glow pulsed softly, illuminating the intricate carvings of the mirror's frame, revealing details she had never noticed before, tiny etchings of stars, moons, and abstract symbols that seemed to hold meaning she could not yet interpret. Lunara reached out once more, fingertips tracing the edge of the glass, feeling the subtle vibrations beneath her touch. She understood, with a clarity that sent a shiver down her spine, that the mirror was a threshold, beautiful, enchanting, and potentially dangerous. It offered glimpses of worlds and secrets beyond ordinary perception, and it tested those who dared to engage with it. She felt a mixture of exhilaration and fear, a combination that made her pulse quicken and her mind sharpen. This was not a toy, nor a mere curiosity. It was a living artifact, and she had become its witness, its participant, and perhaps, in some small way, its companion. Hours passed in the attic, though it felt like moments. Lunara traced the shifting shadows, followed the silvery glimmers of light, and listened to the whispers that threaded through her mind. Each movement, each flicker, each echo of the past or promise of the unknown carried significance. She realized that understanding the mirror would require patience, courage, and keen attention, not just to what she could see, but to what she could feel, sense, and intuit. As dawn approached, the silvery glow receded, leaving only the quiet attic and the familiar reflection of herself in the glass. Yet she felt changed, attuned to something far larger than herself, aware that the mirror's secrets were both beautiful and dangerous. She descended the stairs slowly, journal clutched to her chest, heart still quickened. The whispers lingered faintly in her mind, urging her to return, to observe, and to proceed with care, curiosity, and courage. Lunara understood that the journey had only just begun. The mirror's magic was subtle but powerful, influencing her surroundings, her perception, and her own emotions. Shadows, whispers, silvery glows, these were not accidents or tricks of the light. They were threads of a larger tapestry, a story waiting to unfold, and she, drawn by fascination and tempered by a tinge of fear, was ready to follow its path, step by delicate step, into the mysteries that lay beneath the glass. Moonlit Revelations. The attic was silent, bathed in the silver glow of a rising moon. Lunara paused at the top of the stairs, feeling a subtle pull in her chest, a tug that urged her forward, yet whispered caution at the same time. The air was thick with anticipation, heavy with the scent of old wood and the faint metallic shimmer of magic lingering from the mirror itself. Tonight, she sensed something would change. The mirror had been a companion, a guide, a whispering confidant, but now it seemed poised to reveal something deeper, something that belonged not merely to its hidden path, but to her. She stepped across the threshold, her journal tucked under her arm, pencil poised. Though she was no longer certain she could capture what awaited her in mere words or sketches, the silvery glow along the floorboards pulsed gently, and shadows shifted in subtle patterns across the walls. Each flicker seemed deliberate, as if the attic were breathing in sync with the mirror, and she felt an almost magnetic pull drawing her forward. Lunara approached the mirror slowly, her reflection shimmering faintly in the moonlight. The hidden path, which had revealed itself night after night, now appeared more intricate, more alive. The trees glowed with an ethereal light, and the mist that hovered over the silver streams had thickened, curling in delicate spirals. Tiny figures flitted between the branches, luminous and fleeting, and she could see bridges and towers in the distance, structures that seemed to hum with quiet magic. Yet all of this paled against what the mirror seemed ready to show her as she knelt before the glass. She placed her hands lightly on its surface, feeling the steady pulse beneath her fingertips. The hidden path shifted slightly, bending toward her as though acknowledging her presence, inviting her to look deeper. And then, almost imperceptibly at first, a figure appeared at the edge of the mirror shadow, indistinct and delicate, yet unmistakably human in shape. It did not approach, nor did it speak, yet Lunara felt its gaze, felt the quiet intensity of recognition radiating from it. Her breath caught, the whispers rose in her mind, not chaotic this time, but harmonious, melodic, almost like a chorus of voices speaking in emotion rather than words. They conveyed Caution, invitation, and understanding, layering together in a pattern she could feel more than hear. Her heartbeat quickened, and she realized that this was no ordinary shadow. This was something personal, something tied to her own history, to the path she had been tracing through curiosity and patience. The mirror rippled gently, and suddenly, images began to unfold within the glass knot, just shadows or glimpses of hidden worlds, but scenes from her own past. She saw herself as a child, wandering through sunlit rooms that now seemed distant and dreamlike, memories she had long forgotten, yet which carried a subtle resonance, as though the mirror had been waiting for her to recall them. There were moments she had never consciously remembered, a lullaby hummed softly by a voice she could not fully place, the faint scent of moonflowers in a garden she had once glimpsed only in dreams, a fleeting sense of protection and belonging she had never named. Tears pricked at her eyes. The mirror's revelation was intimate, profound, and overwhelming. She understood, suddenly, that the hidden path was not merely an escape into a magical world. It was a reflection of her own self, of her history, her sensitivities, and the latent magic she carried within her. Every flicker, every whisper, every shadow she had observed in the glass over the past nights was connected, part of a tapestry she had been unknowingly weaving with her attention, her patience, and her courage. The shadow at the edge of the mirror shifted closer now, delicate and deliberate. As she focused, she realized it bore a striking resemblance to someone she had known in fragments of memory, an ancestor, perhaps, or a guardian spirit tied to her bloodline, someone who had walked this hidden path long before her, leaving echoes and impressions that the mirror preserved. The realization filled her with awe. This was not merely a mirror, nor merely a magical world beyond glass. It was a vessel, a conduit between generations, a keeper of secrets and truths that had been waiting for her to arrive. A quiet ache of longing and recognition surged through her chest. She had often felt adrift, aware of sensitivities she could not explain, drawn to the moon and the night in ways that others dismissed as mere preference. Now she understood that her attunement to moonlight, her fascination with shadows, and her curiosity had roots far deeper than she had imagined. The mirror was revealing not just hidden worlds, but hidden truths about herself, about her lineage, her perception, and her capacity for both wonder and courage. Her hands trembled as she traced the edges of the mirror. The hidden path shimmered brighter, responding to her awareness, bending slightly to form a corridor of silver light that seemed to reach out toward her. Tiny creatures flitted along the path, their luminous forms almost like fireflies, delicate and ephemeral. The whispers in her mind became clearer, harmonizing with a deep understanding. She could step closer, engage fully, or turn away. The choice was hers alone, and it carried weight she could feel in every fiber of her being. She paused. To embrace the revelation was to acknowledge herself fully. To reject it would be to retreat into ordinary perception, to deny the truths she had glimpsed, and to close the door to possibilities that could shape not only her life, but the world reflected in a subtle nod that seemed both comforting and encouraging. The whispers carried warmth and gentle insistence, urging her to trust herself. Her fingers pressed more firmly against the glass, feeling the pulse beneath her hands in synchrony with her own heartbeat. The hidden path shimmered, brightening as though responding to her decision, inviting her into a fuller understanding of the mirror, the world beyond, and herself. Lunara closed her eyes, letting the emotions wash over her. Wonder, trepidation, recognition, and courage mingled in a profound tapestry. She felt a quiet transformation taking root, a sense of alignment with something larger than herself, a harmonization of perception and purpose. The mirror was no longer merely an object of fascination. It had become a guide, a reflection of her own inner depths, and a portal to understanding both herself and the magical world that had always existed alongside. The mirror glowed with a gentle radiance, revealing the hidden path in full clarity. She could see the bridge, arched delicately over a silver stream, towers in the distance. But now, intertwined with the magical landscape, were fragments of her own story, faint echoes of laughter, whispers of lullabies, the soft light of moonflowers she had once glimpsed only in dreams. It was a mosaic of memory, magic, and revelation, each piece illuminating the other. Her journal lay open on the floor beside her, untouched for the moment. She realized that words and sketches could capture fragments. It was a feeling, a perception, a quiet illumination that resided within her mind and heart. The mirror had revealed not only hidden worlds, but hidden truths about herself, truths that had been waiting for recognition, patience, and courage to awaken. A soft sigh escaped her lips as she pressed her forehead once more to the glass. The shadow at the edge of the path lingered, almost like a guardian, and she felt the subtle pulse of understanding. She had chosen to embrace the revelation, to accept the magic, the history, and the latent power within herself. The whispers wrapped around her consciousness, harmonizing with her heartbeat, carrying a quiet sense of completion, of alignment, and of infinite potential. The attic seemed to pulse with newfound energy. Shadows moved in gentle, deliberate patterns. Lunara felt herself part of a larger rhythm, a tapestry woven across time and space. She understood, finally, that the mirror's secrets were not merely curiosities to be observed, but truths to be embraced with reverence and courage. As the night deepened, she lingered before the mirror, letting the silence, the glow, and the whispers wash over her. She felt a profound sense of peace, tempered with the thrill of discovery. The mirror had shown her the hidden path, revealed her own history, and offered the quiet illumination of self-understanding. It had tested her curiosity, her courage, and her patience. When she opened her eyes again, the mirror glowed with a gentle radiance, revealing the hidden path in full clarity. She could see the bridge, arched delicately over a silver stream, towers in the distance, and luminous creatures flitting along the trees. But now, intertwined with the magical landscape, were fragments of her own story, faint echoes of laughter, whispers of lullabies, the soft light of moonflowers she had once glimpsed only in dreams. It was a mosaic of memory, magic, and revelation, each piece illuminating the other. Her journal lay open on the floor beside her, untouched for the moment. She realized that words and sketches could capture fragments, but the full depth of what she was experiencing was beyond mere description. It was a feeling, a perception, a quiet illumination that resided within her mind and heart. The mirror had revealed not only hidden worlds, but hidden truths about herself. Truths that had been waiting for recognition, patience, and courage to awaken. A soft sigh escaped her lips as she pressed her forehead once more to the glass. The shadow at the edge of the path lingered, almost like a guardian, and she felt the subtle pulse of understanding. She had chosen to embrace the revelation, to accept the magic, the history, and the latent power within herself. The whispers wrapped around her consciousness, harmonizing with her heartbeat, carrying a quiet sense of completion, of alignment, and of infinite potential. The attic seemed to pulse with newfound energy. Shadows moved in gentle, deliberate patterns. Silver light glimmered across the walls, and the hidden path shimmered within the mirror, alive and vibrant. Lunara felt herself part of a larger rhythm, a tapestry woven across time and space, a dialogue between generations, worlds, and the quiet magic that connected them. She understood, finally, that the mirror's secrets were not merely curiosities to be observed, but truths to be embraced with reverence and courage. As the night deepened, she lingered before the mirror, letting the silence, the glow, and the whispers wash over her. She felt a profound sense of peace, tempered with the thrill of discovery. The mirror had shown her the hidden path, revealed her own history, and offered the quiet illumination of self-understanding. It had tested her curiosity, her courage, and her patience, and she had risen to the moment, stepping fully into the awareness it offered. When she finally stepped back, the first hints of dawn brushed the edges of the attic window. The hidden path receded gently into silver ripples, and the attic returned to its ordinary appearance. Yet Lunara felt changed. She carried the pulse of revelation within her, the quiet understanding of her place in both the ordinary and magical worlds, and the sense that the journey was only beginning. The mirror's glow lingered faintly in her mind's eye, a reminder that some doors, once opened, could never truly close, and that the pursuit of understanding, courage, and self-discovery was a path that stretched endlessly forward. Lunara descended the stairs slowly, journal in hand, each step deliberate, feeling the weight and the lightness of what she had learned. The moon outside bathed the world in silver light, echoing the illumination she had felt within, and she realized that she was no longer the same observer who had first discovered the mirror. She was a participant, a witness, and a keeper of the quiet magic that threaded through her own life, the hidden path, and the world beyond the glass. The mirror had revealed its secrets, and in doing so, it had revealed her own. She understood now that curiosity, patience, courage, and attentiveness were not merely virtues, they were keys to unlocking the mysteries of herself and the worlds that lay just beyond ordinary perception. And with that understanding came a quiet, profound transformation. She could see, she could feel, she could engage with wonder and respect, and she knew that the journey ahead, though uncertain, would be filled with the same beauty, and illumination she had glimpsed tonight. Reflections of Dawn. The first light of dawn crept slowly across the sky, painting the horizon in soft pastels of rose, gold, and pale lavender. The attic, which had been alive with the pulse of moonlight only hours before, now lay quiet, bathed in the gentle glow of morning. Shadows softened and stretched lazily across the floorboards, no longer flickering or shifting as they had in the night's deeper hours. Lunara sat cross-legged before the mirror, hands folded in her lap, and breathed in the stillness, the hidden path, the luminous trees. The mist, curling in delicate spirals, all had faded into the glass, leaving only her own reflection. And yet, the memory of what she had seen, felt, and understood lingered, woven into her consciousness like an indelible thread. She touched the mirror lightly, fingertips brushing the cool surface, and felt no pulse this time. No tug, no whisper, no subtle vibration. The magic had receded, withdrawn into the hidden realms beyond, leaving a calm, luminous silence in its place. Lunara closed her eyes, letting herself sink into the sensation of quiet. The moonlight's retreat was not a loss, she realized, but a gentle transition, like the closing of a chapter whose lessons had been learned. The attic smelled faintly of old wood and dust, yet beneath that was a lingering sweetness, the residue of magic that had been present only hours before. She could feel it, not as an external force now, but as something internal, a subtle, enduring awareness that had settled within her. Her mind wandered over the journey of the past nights, the first flicker of the mirror at twilight, the whispered secrets brushing against her thoughts, the hidden path bathed in silver moonlight, and the shadowed figures that had hovered just beyond perception. Each memory shimmered in her mind like a star fading into dawn, bright and distinct, yet merging gently into the calm clarity of understanding. She thought of the moments of fear, the nights spent observing and recording, the choices she had faced between retreat and engagement, between caution and courage. Every step, every glance, every heartbeat had brought her to this stillness. As she reflected, Lunara recognized a quiet transformation within herself. The curiosity that had drawn her to the mirror was still present. Her courage had deepened, not the impulsive kind that leaps without thought, but the steady courage that allows one to linger in the unknown, to observe and to learn without being swept away. She could feel the threads of the mirror's magic woven into her perception, subtle but undeniable. guiding her to notice details she had once overlooked, the way sunlight shifted across the floor, the soft hum of the attic settling with the new day, the faint scent of moonflowers she imagined blooming somewhere just beyond her sight. Her journal lay open at her side, pages filled with sketches and notes, observations and reflections. She traced her pencil lightly over the drawings of the hidden path, the bridges, the glowing creatures, and the shadowed figures. But more than that, she traced the lines that connected her experiences to herself, seeing patterns of growth, awareness, and understanding. It was not simply a record of what she had observed, but a testament to the transformation that had taken place within her. She understood now that the mirror had not merely shown her a magical world. It had revealed the layers of her own self, her perceptions, her sensitivities, and the quiet courage she carried within. She let herself smile softly. The awe she had felt in the presence of the mirror's magic had not dimmed, but it had evolved. It was no longer a sudden, almost overwhelming sensation of wonder, but a calm, enduring appreciation for the interconnectedness of perception, memory, and magic. She could feel the echoes of the hidden path in her own mind, luminous threads weaving through thought and sensation, subtle but persistent. The attic, quiet and sunlit now, seemed almost a sacred space, a place where ordinary life intersected with extraordinary perception. Lunara leaned back slightly, resting her hands on the floorboards, and let her gaze wander over the familiar objects in the attic. The old boxes, the dust-covered furniture, the forgotten books, they all seemed infused with quiet possibility, carrying the faint memory of what had transpired under moonlight. The mirror, too, now seemed more like a companion in its stillness, a keeper of secrets and truths that required both patience and reverence. She could see, in the gentle morning light, the intricate carvings on its frame glinting faintly, delicate spirals and symbols that hinted at stories she had only begun to understand. A thought arose, tender and lingering. The mirror's magic might return. Though it had withdrawn for now, she sensed the faint, almost imperceptible pulse beneath the surface of her awareness, a reminder that the threshold between worlds remained, waiting for the right moment, the right alignment of curiosity and courage, for the hidden path to shimmer again. The possibility brought with it no fear this time, only a quiet anticipation, a knowing that some mysteries exist, not to be conquered or rushed, but to be cherished, honored, and engaged with when the moment is right. She traced a finger along the mirror's edge, feeling the smooth coolness, and reflected on the lessons she had learned. Magic, she realized, was not merely about spectacle or wonder. It was about perception, understanding, and connection. The hidden path had been a revelation, not because it was dazzling, but because it had mirrored her own journey, reflecting the nuances of curiosity, patience, courage, and self-awareness, the shadows and whispers, the luminous trees and mist, the fleeting figures at the edges of the path. They were all elements of a teaching, guiding her to notice, to respect, and to integrate what she observed. Her thoughts drifted to the soft whispers she had heard in the mirror, melodic and insistent, carrying meaning without words. They had been guides, confidants, and subtle provocateurs, leading her to insights she might otherwise have overlooked. She could feel their echoes lingering now, intertwined with her own consciousness, a quiet resonance that hummed beneath thought and sensation. Even as the magic of the mirror withdrew, she knew that the wisdom it offered remained, like a seed planted deep within her awareness, ready to bloom in its own time. The attic, now fully illuminated by dawn, seemed transformed. Where shadows had once danced and flickered with the mirror's energy, there was now a gentle, steady light, soft and diffuse. It was a calmness that carried no urgency, no pull, only the serene weight of understanding. Lunara felt the serenity settle within her chest, spreading outward like warmth. She understood deeply and quietly that the mirror's revelations had not ended. They had simply entered a different phase, one of reflection, integration, and patient awareness. She rose slowly to her feet, journal in hand, and took one last glance at the mirror. Its surface reflected her image, now familiar yet subtly altered. There was a quiet dignity in her posture, a calm curiosity in her eyes, and a gentle light about her presence that had not been there before. She realized that this was not the reflection of a person who had merely observed magic, but of someone who had engaged, learned, and grown through it. The mirror had offered her a choice, a revelation, and she had embraced it with courage and awareness. The shadows in the corners of the attic seemed to respond to her movement, softening and stretching toward the edges of the room. Tiny motes of dust floated in the sunlight, catching the light in delicate patterns that reminded her of the shimmer of the hidden path. Every detail, every small element of the ordinary attic now carried the subtle imprint of magic, a reminder that the extraordinary could be found not only in a mirror or a hidden world, but in the careful, patient attention to the world around her. Lunara set her journal on the floor beside the mirror and sat quietly, letting the serenity of dawn wash over her. She thought of the nights she had spent under the moon's glow, tracing shadows, listening to whispers, and observing the hidden path. Each night had been a lesson in perception, patience, and courage. And now, as the day began, she understood that the true revelation was not only in the mirror, but within herself. She carried the quiet magic in her awareness, in her understanding, and in her ability to observe, reflect, and integrate experience. A gentle breeze drifted through the open window, carrying with it the faint scent of morning flowers and the freshness of the new day. Lunara inhaled deeply, feeling the energy of dawn fill her lungs and spread through her body. It was a reminder that transitions, like the fading moonlight and rising sun, were natural and necessary, that every ending carried within it the seed of a beginning. The mirror's withdrawal was not a closure, but a pause, a moment of reflection before the next chapter, before the next shimmer of silver light that might beckon her again. She placed a hand lightly on the mirror one last time, feeling the cool surface beneath her fingertips. There was no pulse now, no whisper, no tug, only stillness and calm. Yet, in that stillness, she felt the enduring presence of what had transpired, the revelations, the courage, the curiosity, and the quiet growth that had emerged from engagement with the hidden path. She knew that even in its silence, the mirror held its magic, waiting patiently for her return, and that her own perception had been forever deepened. Lunara stood and descended the attic stairs slowly, each step deliberate, carrying the serenity and illumination of the night within her. The household was quiet, the first light of day filtering through the windows, casting gentle patterns across familiar furniture and floorboards. She felt a connection, subtle but profound, between the ordinary world around her and the extraordinary awareness she now possessed. The attic and the mirror, though quiet, remained portals in her consciousness, thresholds she could revisit in thought, memory, and attention, even when the magic itself withdrew. As she reached the bottom of the stairs, she turned once more to glance at the attic door. The mirror lay within, serene, silent, yet unmistakably alive with the potential of what could return. A soft smile touched her lips. The journey had changed her. She felt enlightened, calm, and attuned to the subtleties of perception, magic, and self-awareness. The hidden path would wait, the whispers would wait, and the quiet lessons of the mirror would continue to resonate within her. Lunara stepped into the early morning light. The world around her bathed in soft hues of dawn. Every sound, every movement, every shimmer of sunlight seemed imbued with possibility, echoing the quiet magic of the mirror and the hidden path. She understood that the revelations of the night were not just about hidden worlds or mystical secrets. They were about the enduring wonder of perception, the beauty of curiosity tempered with patience, and the serenity that comes from embracing understanding without haste or fear. She walked forward slowly, carrying the calm, reflective awareness of her journey. The attic and the mirror would remain a part of her, a quiet testament to growth, magic, and the enduring mystery of the hidden path. And somewhere beyond the ordinary and familiar, she sensed the faint shimmer of possibility, the subtle echo of silver light, and the quiet promise that the mirror's magic, patient and eternal, might return once more. As dawn spreads its gentle light, the mirror's magic rests for now, but the night holds whispers and secrets, waiting quietly for your return. Rest well, dream deeply, and let moonlight guide your heart. Until next time, sleep gently, dear dreamer.